Hey there Wargamers, and welcome back to another Wargames Delivered video. In this video, we're going to be continuing our Painting Basics series, going over layering and basing. Let's get started. Okay, so starting off the layering phase, we are going to switch over to hemp rope, and we're going to use this to highlight all of the raised areas of the inner robes on Grandmaster Yoda. And as we did in the last video, we're going to thin down our paints with a bit of water and use 2 to 3 thin coats to get a nice even line on your highlights. And throughout this video, you'll see me kind of testing the viscosity and quality of the paint on my thumb. I do that quite a bit. You can use a paper towel or your thumb or any kind of paper really to test your paints. I kind of do this just to make sure my paints are thin enough and to wipe off any excess on my brush before I use it on the model. And with the standard acrylics, you want to give them about 10 minutes to dry. Next up, we will stick with Troll Claws, and we're going to use this to paint all of Yoda's nails on his hands and feet. Again, try to be very careful around the skin that we've done earlier. If you do accidentally get a little bit on the skin, you can just go ahead and take Commando Green, what we used earlier, and go ahead and bring that color back up. Now, these smaller models and smaller areas can be harder to paint, and sometimes when you're a coffee addict like me, your hands can shake, so the best way to avoid this, I've found, is just brace your hand into the desk that you're using, just push down, and also just push your fingers into each other when you can, when you're painting your model. And in the next step, we'll be highlighting the skin, so if you do make any mistakes with the Troll Claws on the nails on Yoda, just feel free to wait till the next step and we will fix all those mistakes. Once we have that step finished, we're going to switch over to Commando Green again, the base tone for Yoda's skin. And what we're going to do is just kind of bring the mid-tone of the model back up. Go over all of the raised areas, pretty much anything that's not a recessed area you want to cover back with this color. And if you do accidentally get some in a recessed area, just go ahead and wait for it to dry and reapply the military shader that we did earlier. During the layering step, you'll see me go back and forth to the paint and my water pot quite a bit. You really want to keep your paint fresh, and it's kind of hard with a smaller brush like this. Ideally, a thicker brush with a very fine tip is what you kind of want for this step. Moving on to the head and face, this is where you're going to want to be as neat as possible. So use the techniques I mentioned earlier, brace your hands, push them together, do everything you can to try to avoid making mistakes here. And this takes time. Mistakes happen in the hobby all the time. So what I found is the best solution is just have your wash or your shade next to you on your palette, just close so that you can fix those mistakes when you need to. And again, the only spots that I'm avoiding at this moment are just the deepest recess areas, like under his chin, in between his fingers and toes, the wrinkles in his face, areas like that. Once you have that step finished, we're going to switch over to Scaly Hide, and we're going to use a 1-to-1 ratio of Scaly Hide and Commando Green here. And we're going to use this to kind of just go over the more raised areas and start creating some highlights. And we're not going over all of the Commando Green that we did earlier, just the raised bits and the just the sharpest highlights you would see. And with this step, it's very important to just work slowly, build up your highlights over time, and take your time with it and try to be as neat as possible. And sometimes with the faces and the more detailed areas, it's nice to kind of go back and forth between your commando green, your midtone, and your highlight, the scaly green, or scaly hide rather, and just really take your time and establish the highlights and shadows. And again, this is just sort of a rough guideline. You don't have to do every single step that I'm doing, or you can add steps if you'd like to. I'm just kind of showing you how I would do it. I'm not a professional, so just take that into consideration when watching these videos. Moving on to our final highlight for the skin will be pure scaly hide, and we will use this on all of the raised areas that you think the light would be hitting the most. Try to leave a little bit of the scaly hide and commando green mixture underneath, so you have a little bit of gradient. But essentially you are just repeating the last step you did here. So just again, try to be very neat and take your time with it, and you should come out with a good result. And again, with layering, you want to be constantly adding water, adding paint, and testing it out on your thumb or a flat surface or a piece of paper, anything like that. And on the face with this highlight, you can pretty much leave everything underneath the cheekbones and the nose alone, aside for the lips. This can be the most time-consuming and honestly frustrating step, so again, take your time with it. There's no rush, and feel free to step away if you need to. But if you keep at it, you will eventually get the result that you're looking for. Moving along to our final few steps here, we're going to switch over to a 1-to-1 ratio of Castle Gray and Pure White. We're going to mix this together with a normal brush, and then once that's mixed together, we're going to take a dry brush and mix that in and dry brush this right onto the hair. You can use a piece of cardboard or a paper towel to work in the paint on your dry brush. The most important thing is to just remember to not add water to it. And that's about the consistency that we're looking for. We're going to move on and do this over the entirety of his hair, being very careful over the surrounding areas. And this step is just a quick way to add contrast and interest to Yoda's hairline. And when dry brushing a very focused area like this, I'm being very careful and very light with my brush strokes, not really trying to push it in, just kind of working very slowly and lightly with the brush. This can be hard to tell how much paint is being applied and how much you're highlighting at a time, so just take breaks and look at it every once in a while. I would say if you do this step for about a minute and a half, you're probably set. Once those are finished, we will switch over to our last two final steps. The first one is going to be adding a layer of matte varnish to the model that we've painted so far, and then the final step will be to base the model. Now before basing, we will add a little bit of matte varnish to the model. We're going to want about a 2-to-1 water to matte varnish ratio for this, and give it about an hour and a half to dry. Make sure to give the model a nice even coat of matte varnish, and once that's dry, we'll switch over to basing, and then he is ready for the battlefield. The only thing to look out for with this step is any white pooling areas will actually dry a little bit satin rather than matte. And finally, here's the reveal of our Grandmaster Yoda. I'm very pleased with how the Army Painter paints worked on him. Thanks for watching, guys.